Hi you guys, today I'm going to show you how to make my gluten-free Hawaiian bread bowls. I grew up with these things at parties. I don't know if you did, but they make a King's Hawaiian round bread and they don't make it gluten-free, so we have to make our own if we want to do it. And we can do just that. These are super simple to make. They start with my gluten-free sweet dough. It's what I call a miracle dough because it makes so many recipes. And you just fill them with whatever dips you want. I happen to have two here that I'm going to actually give the recipes for, but you can fill them with a variety of dips, any dip you'd like. Hot, cold, it doesn't matter. So let's get into it and I'll show you how to make it. Okay, we're starting with the dough, of course, because you know this dough needs to go in the fridge overnight. And I have 300 grams of whole milk in my bowl. I'm adding to that 2 large eggs, which are at room temperature, and 200 grams of granulated sugar. You've seen me make this dough probably hundreds of times by now, so I'm not going to be very detailed in this. It's just simply throwing a bunch of ingredients in a mixer bowl and mixing it up and letting it proof and refrigerating it. I'm adding 10 grams of psyllium husks, that's whole psyllium husks, and 169 grams of butter, which is very soft. You can also melt it if you want. I just left this out on my counter for a couple of hours and it got nice and soft. And now I'm adding 24 grams of instant yeast and 1 3/4 teaspoons of baking powder. Along with 6 grams of kosher salt. And then we're going to add 495 grams of my bread flour blend. That's my gluten-free bread flour blend. And you might wonder why I'm not commenting on the cups amount. And that is because I have decided for all of my bread recipes that are either yeast-based or sourdough based that I will only give the weight measurements. And there's a reason for that because they only really work with weight measurements. I have to field so many questions and comments saying my bread didn't work out right and they're saying a cup is equal to this amount and whatever. And I'm telling you, if you don't weigh your ingredients, you are not going to get the right results. So weighing you should be doing anyway when you make my flour blends because they only come in weight measurements, and it's just the more traditional and standard way to do things and the best way to do things. So we get this on the mixer and we're going to mix it on like medium for about 5 minutes or so until everything is well incorporated, just like this. And then we'll scrape down the bowl. You can also put this in another bowl, by the way. I just always use my mixing bowls because why dirty another bowl? You know how I am about dishes. I absolutely hate to have extra dishes and I already have so many. So why not just keep it in the same bowl? That was my dog, by the way, squeaking his squeaky toy in the background. Unfortunately, there is nothing I can do about it. Now he's grabbed a bone, so if you hear crunching, that is just him crunching on a bone. So we put the dough in, we let it proof, and then we put it in the fridge overnight, and here we are now with our nice and chilled dough. I can't stress that enough about this dough, or any of my doughs really, unless specified in a recipe. Most of them work better chilled, and I mean really chilled, not an hour or two, I mean like 6+ hours. So we're just gonna scoop this out and we're gonna knead it for a little bit just to get it nice and smooth. That's the only reason I need any of my doughs. Obviously, I'm not needing to strengthen the gluten network because there is no gluten. So when people ask me, why would you bother kneading it? And this is why. It's like to knock out extra air bubbles and to get the dough nice and smooth. I have tried not kneading the dough in certain recipes like my sourdough, and I found huge holes in the bread after it was baked. So this to me is essential. Now, if you want to experiment on your own, go for it. Okay, there. Now that it's nice and smooth, I'm going to cut it in half. You do not have to do this part. I want 2 smaller bread bowls. You can also make 1 large bread bowl if that's what you'd like. So I'm just going to cut it in half. You can weigh it. I like to. You don't have to. You can just eyeball it. It's not a big deal. So now I'm going to take each one and just quickly get it into shape. It's already been kneaded, so I'm just doing a quick shaping, and I want it at its most taut into a nice taut round. So I kind of drag it across the bench just a little bit and close up any seams on the bottom as best I can. These are 6-inch disposable aluminum pie plates that I like to use for these smaller bowls. So what I like to do, once I put them in the tin, I like to flatten them with my hand, just using the palm of my hand, just flatten them into that pie dish. And that just creates more of that bowl look instead of like a really tall risen loaf of dough. Okay, I'm going to put these on a parchment lined baking sheet. And now I'm just squirting them with a little bit of cooking spray, gluten-free of course. And that's just to smooth the tops a little bit. You can also put butter on them if you'd like, but you don't have to put anything on them. There's no need to do an egg wash on these because they get plenty dark. But first we have to let them rise. So I'm going to grab a large piece of plastic wrap, and I'm going to cover them loosely with the plastic wrap and get them into a warm place to rise. This may take like an hour and a half, but it is winter right now, so it could take even 2 to 3 hours. Okay, so while those are proofing, let's go ahead and make our dips. This is a cold spinach dip, not the spinach artichoke dip that you might be familiar with. This is 1.5 cups or 360 grams of sour cream. And to that, I'm adding 3/4 a cup or 180 grams of mayonnaise, 1 teaspoon of fresh lemon juice, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, which is gluten-free if you look on your labels. And then this is a teaspoon of paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and a teaspoon of salt, along with 1/2 cup or 60 grams of shredded carrots. And then I'm adding in 2 small scallions that have been finely diced and 1 10-ounce package of frozen chopped spinach that has been thawed and squeezed dry. And we'll just mix this up, and that's all there is to this dip. But you do have to let it chill for a good hour or 2. And now we'll make the ham dip. This recipe I have had for years, literally like 25, maybe 30 years. I don't know. This was from one of our friends who worked with us at Smokey's, my mom and dad's old bar and restaurant. And I'm taking 1 5-ounce can of canned ham. This is Hormel brand. I think it says smoked canned ham. Could you use like fresh ham, like shredded up? Sure, you can definitely do that. But this ham is salty and it kind of goes well in the dip. It seems odd, but it's going to work well. So I've shredded this with a fork, and I'm adding to that a cup, which is 240 grams of mayonnaise, and also 1/2 cup or 120 grams of sour cream. That was not in the original recipe. It was all mayonnaise, and I felt like it needed a little more lightness, I guess, to it. And then I have 1 package, which is 1 ounce of dry ranch dressing mix. Make sure yours is gluten-free. This was not Hidden Valley Ranch. I actually got mine at Aldi, and it said right on it, gluten-free. I checked all the ingredients, and that is really what makes this dip so delicious. And y'all, that's it for the dip. So here are my proofed bread bowls, and they have nearly doubled in size. I'm going to get these in a 350-degree oven for anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes, or until a thermometer registers 190 Fahrenheit. Now this is optional, but I like to take a turned over disposable baking pan and put it on top for the first 20 minutes. And that not only creates a little bit of a steam environment, but it also shields the dough from getting too dark too soon. Again, that is totally optional. These are out of the oven. As you can see, they're nice and soft. They actually have been cooling for about an hour, but you can see how deep they are without being like too overly deep. And you can take them right out of the pans if you'd like. You can leave them in the pans. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get to carving these up, and you just kind of use your own judgment with this. Use a serrated knife and start around the edge and kind of go in diagonally around the entire thing to create that bowl shape. And then what I like to do is come in crosswise, doing one row, and then turn the bread and do another row to make like cubes of bread. And you might have to go back in, but if you can see this bread, look at how soft and wonderful this bread is. This is my sweet dough. Like I said, it's used in so many recipes. The original King's Hawaiian round bread is a sweet bread. And if your chunks are too large for dipping, you can always pull them apart, or you can cut them if you'd rather have them nice and pretty. I like just the irregular shapes. I think they work best. And another thing you can do is you could toast these up if you'd rather have like more of a toasted bread for dipping. I like them just like this. This is how they were always served when I was in my, teens and 20s. Okay, I've got everything set up on a nice platter, and I've also got some fresh veggies for dipping. And we'll just load up our dips into their bowls and have at it, you guys. Now, once you fill these, they will, if they're not devoured within the first hour, you can cover them and put them in the fridge where they will last, or wrap them in foil and put them in the fridge where they will last for about 3 days or so. If you want to make these in advance, you can certainly do so, and then just leave them at room temperature in a well-sealed container or like a Ziploc bag, and they will last at room temperature for about 2 to 3 days. That is unfilled. You can't, once you fill them, you definitely have to refrigerate them. And you can also, of course, make this way in advance and store it in the freezer, and then cut it up when you're ready for your party or whatever. So let's go in for a bite of the best ham dip you will ever have. The easiest, and it is so good, you guys. If you make these for your party and you have gluten-free guests, they're going to think that they have to pass this up. Make sure to tell them that this is gluten-free, because they're going to think it's not. And it is so good, nobody will believe it's gluten-free. Enjoy.